Hello, my name is Kevin Hubbard. I am the Acting Federal Aviation Administration's Regional Administrator for the Alaskan region. Thank you for joining us at this informal airspace meeting to consider the proposed changes to Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport's Class C airspace. Anchorage is a crucial hub for aviation with a major international and cargo airport, a busy general aviation airport, the busiest seaplane base in the world, and two military airfields. These airports provide many services that connect Anchorage and the United States to the world, while the two military airfields are strategic assets important to our national defense. As many of you are intimately familiar, aviation is the lifeblood of economic activity in our home state, employing thousands of Alaskans, generating hundreds of millions in annual revenue, and providing crucial life-sustaining services to our communities across the state. Each of these airports has a dedicated airspace that is under the watchful eyes of highly skilled air traffic controllers and support staff. At this meeting, we will learn how Anchorage Airspace operates today and review the proposed changes for aircraft flying in and around Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport. As a joint sponsor and cooperating partner in this action, I'd like to introduce Colonel Charles Shell Shuck, Commander of the 3rd Wing Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, to talk about the Air Force's role in the region.
Hello, citizens of Alaska and fellow aviators. I'm Colonel Charles Shell Shuck, Commander of the 3rd Wing, Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, and an F-22 pilot at JBER. The 3rd Wing at JBER is vital to the defense of the nation and the security of the Indo-Pacific region. Our mission is to provide air dominance, global mobility, and command and control for combatant commanders, ensuring the United States can project power and respond effectively to crisis around the world. We achieve this through a diverse array of aircraft and highly trained personnel, ready to deploy at a moment's notice. JBER's infrastructure is a critical component of our ability to execute this mission. We are currently in the process of extending the existing north-south runway from 7,500 feet to 10,000 feet. This project has been a monumental undertaking, requiring the movement of approximately 12 million cubic yards of material, literally moving a mountain to improve our infrastructure. This extension is not merely a matter of convenience. It's a necessity for improved safety for both military and civilian aircraft in the Anchorage Bowl, increased efficiency for our fighter aircraft executing daily training missions, and increased capacity to support the demand for air power operations worldwide. Completing this runway extension is an investment in our ability to respond to crisis in the Indo-Pacific and the safety of all who fly in and out of Anchorage. We're confident that the FAA's proposal through the ATAPS process meets those objectives, and we stand by their recommendations. We at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson are committed to being good neighbors, fair and safe operators in this busy airspace, and responsible stewards of the environment. We do this simultaneously while ensuring we are ready to defend our nation and support our allies. The 3rd Wing remains dedicated to its mission, its people, and the safety and security of the United States. Thank you for your time, and see you in the air.
Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport, or ANC, is a commercial service airport that also serves as the 4th busiest cargo airport in the world. Commercial and air cargo operations account for about 280,000 takeoffs and landings per year. The Associated Airport Traffic Control Tower and Terminal Radar Approach Control Facility, or TRACON, operate 24 hours per day, 7 days per week within Class C airspace, also referred to as Class Charlie. The airspace serving ANC covers an area some 20 miles wide, with altitude limits varying from the surface to 4,100 feet. The Airport Traffic Control Tower and TRACON are located at ANC and provide air traffic services to 5 towered airports. The Anchorage area experiences a robust mix of aircraft, including scheduled air carrier, air taxi, cargo, corporate, military, and general aviation aircraft. The Anchorage Class C airspace abuts Class D airspaces at Lake Hood, Merrill Field, Elmendorf Air Force Base, and Bryant Army Airfield. Aircraft operating to and from Lake Hood and Merrill Field often transition over the Knik Arm, operating under special flight rules established in Title 14 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 93, Subpart D. Aircraft arriving and departing Elmendorf transition through the Anchorage, Lake Hood, and Merrill segments. Numerous aircraft operations occur within this area by non-participating VFR aircraft. A non-participating VFR aircraft is an aircraft that has not been radar identified, whose altitude has not been verified, and who is not receiving traffic advisories or alerts. VFR refers to aircraft being flown under visual flight rules, where pilots are not always required to communicate with air traffic control. The Class C surface area surrounding Anchorage International Airport extends outward from the airport 5 nautical miles from the surface to 4,100 feet mean sea level, or MSL, with the exception of the airspace south of the airport, which has a floor of 600 feet MSL. Beyond that, the Class C extends from 5 nautical miles to 10 nautical miles, from various altitudes to 4,100 feet MSL. MSL is the average height above the world's oceans and is used to calculate an aircraft's true altitude or elevation. Why are we proposing this change? Elmendorf Air Force Base is lengthening its north-south runway at J-Bear and moving most of its day-to-day operations from the east-west runway to this new extended north-south runway. Construction on the extension of the north-south runway began in 2018 with the goal of providing greater efficiency and improved combat readiness to the Air Force units at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson. Integrating this new runway and facilitating additional military capability without adversely affecting access to surrounding airports was the major goal of the proposal. Additionally, the proposed airspace will provide greater separation between aircraft and reduce the occurrence of traffic avoidance alerts when non-participating aircraft come in close proximity to participating aircraft while on final approach to Anchorage and Elmendorf. In addition, this change organizes air traffic flows to and from Lake Hood and Merrill Field more efficiently. Here we will look at an example of the conflicts we are attempting to resolve safely and efficiently. In this example, Linden Air Cargo 405, a C-130, was inbound to Anchorage International Airport. While on downwind to runway 15 at 5,000 feet, Linden 405 was vectored by air traffic control away from non-participating VFR traffic maneuvering to their north, also at 5,000 feet. Linden 405 received several traffic advisories and a traffic alert from Anchorage TRACON as the non-participating traffic turned into their path. Linden 405 then had to respond to a resolution advisory and climbed to 5,300 feet to avoid a collision. The non-participating VFR aircraft continued maneuvering to the south and east, descending to 3,500 feet to cross the runway 15 final approach course. Air traffic control then had to provide delay vectors to ACE Air 933 off the arrival path to avoid another proximity event with the same non-participating aircraft before they could join final. This example highlights the loose flight of non-participating aircraft in close proximity to IFR aircraft landing at Anchorage. Since 2019, there have been over 100 mandatory occurrence reports for aircraft responding to resolution advisories, dozens of near-mid-air collision and hazardous air traffic reports, and numerous tales from aviators received at runway safety meetings about the close proximity of aircraft operating in the Anchorage Bowl. The FAA is proposing these enhancements to improve overall safety, efficiently control the significant increase in regional traffic volume, incorporate advancements in flight technology, and accommodate air traffic flow changes caused by the extension Elmendorf runway 17. The current Class C airspace no longer meets the needs of the flying public and must be revised. Next, we will learn about the proposed Class C airspace overall and each segment.
Welcome to the FAA's Anchorage Class Charlie informal airspace meeting. We're glad you could join us for this virtual event. I'm Brian Oakes, the FAA's moderator for today's meeting. Our proposal is to modify the Anchorage Class Charlie, amend Part 93, Subpart D of Title 14 of the Code of Federal Regulations, and modify adjacent Class Delta surface areas. The purpose of this meeting is to gather additional information to be considered while developing the proposal. These meetings provide interested parties with an opportunity to present views, recommendations, and comments on the proposal. This design incorporates the extended runway at Elmendorf Air Force Base while merging novel traffic flows between aircraft operating in the Anchorage Class Charlie and adjacent Class Delta surface areas. As a result, the proposed modification will increase safety and reduce the risk of conflicts between aircraft. Our meeting continues with the FAA's detailed presentation of the proposed Anchorage Class Charlie. After our description, public presentations from attendees who registered to speak in advance will be heard. We will then open a live question and answer session where attendees can submit written questions. At the completion of the question and answer session and closing remarks, our meeting will adjourn. For those who are joining us live, your microphones will be muted and cameras turned off. To submit a question during the Q&A, click on the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, then enter your written question into the pop-up window. If you're having technical issues submitting a question, please text our technical support team at 949-478-0253. This phone number is for text messaging only. The FAA is soliciting additional comments on this proposal via the Federal Register. You can submit comments by email or mail to the addresses shown on the screen. Comments must be received no later than Friday, October 24th, 2025. You can also visit our webpage, available through the QR code. Next, you will hear an overview of the proposal from our local air traffic controllers.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Beal, Operations Supervisor at Anchorage Air Traffic Control Tower. Over the next few slides, I'll provide a basic overview of Anchorage International and adjacent airports. Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport is a commercial service airport located in the south central area of Alaska. The airport is the fourth busiest cargo airport in the world and serves nearly 3 million commercial passengers. Next to Anchorage is Lake Hood Seaplane Base, which is the busiest seaplane base in the world, with 72,000 yearly operations. The runways at Anchorage were built to align with the prevailing wind direction in the area. To operate safely, aircraft typically take off and land into the wind. You will see numbers on the runway, and those numbers indicate the compass heading the direction of the aircraft as it lands or takes off. Parallel runways are distinguished from each other by the designation L for left or R for right. Anchorage is equipped with two parallel runways designated runway 7 left or 25 right and runway 7 right or 25 left. There is a third runway designated runway 1533 that is north of the parallel runways. The selection of the runway in use is managed by FAA Air Traffic Control and is dependent on wind direction and other operational factors. There are two typical operational flows in the Anchorage Bowl, runway 733 operations and runway 1525 operations. Within 10 nautical miles, abbreviated as NM, of Anchorage International Airport, there are a mix of general aviation and military airports. These are Merrill Field, Lake Hood Seaplane Base, Elmendorf Air Force Base, and Bryant Army Airfield. Restricted Area 2203 is located northeast of Elmendorf Air Force Base, and the Anchorage Terminal Area is additionally subject to Part 93, Title 14 of the Code of Federal Regulations, also called Special Air Traffic Rules. The primary purpose of the air traffic control system is to prevent a collision involving aircraft operating in the system. We do this through the application of ATC standards in controlled airspace. Controlled airspace includes classes A, B, C, D, and E. In controlled airspace, air traffic control services are provided to participating aircraft. Aircraft must also comply with Part 93 special air traffic rules where established. In Class Charlie, aircraft must be equipped with a two-way radio and must establish communications with ATC prior to entering. A transponder with altitude reporting capability and ADS-B out is required to operate in and above Class Charlie. In Class Delta, aircraft must be equipped with a two-way radio and must establish communications with ATC prior to entering. Separation minima are less in Class Delta airspace, with ATC providing traffic advisories, sequencing instructions, and runway separation to VFR aircraft. Pilots are expected to see and avoid traffic that is operating around them, and there is no ADS-B out or Mode C requirement. Part 93 Special Air Traffic Rules allow aircraft to transition airspace segments in a prescribed fashion. Established in Anchorage in 1963 to prevent collisions between military and civilian aviators, the Special Air Traffic Rules are lengthy. These rules can be reviewed in the Federal Register, Anchorage Terminal Area Chart, and the Alaska Chart Supplement.
Hello, my name is Clark Wolverton, and I am the support manager for Anchorage TRACON. The following slides will present graphics depicting the current Anchorage airspace and the FAA proposal. The FAA has conducted an extensive study, and the following graphics reflect the detailed work done to design the proposed airspace. This graphic shows the current terminal airspace chart for Anchorage International, depicting the Class C with a solid garnet line. The blue dashed lines show Class D airspace boundaries at Merrill Field, Lake Hood Seaplane Base, Elmendorf Air Force Base, and Bryant Army Airfield. The floor of the airspace is determined by regulation, beginning at ground level, shown as surface or SFC, close to the airport, and rising to 600 feet and to 1,400 feet above mean sea level or MSL, farther from the airport. The current Class C overlies one major airport, Anchorage International, and is adjacent to Lake Hood Seaplane Base and Merrill Field. Northeast of Merrill Field is Elmendorf Air Force Base and Bryant Army Airfield. These adjacent Class D service areas begin at the surface and have ceilings of 3,000 feet MSL for Elmendorf and 2,900 feet MSL for Bryant. In January of 2025, as part of the Class C modification process, the Alaska Department of Transportation facilitated the establishment of the Anchorage Class C Ad Hoc Committee, where the FAA explained the proposed airspace. The Ad Hoc Committee was comprised of local airspace users to provide input and recommendations on the proposed Class C. After receiving the Ad Hoc Committee's recommendations and reviewing the committee's final report, the FAA modified the Class C proposal. The modified proposal considers the Ad Hoc Committee's recommendations while still addressing the need to enhance the safety surrounding the existing Anchorage terminal area. Each area will be individually reviewed in the upcoming slides. This graphic shows the proposed Class C airspace. The proposal is divided into 13 areas designated by the letters A through M. Altitudes covered by these areas range from the surface to 4,100 feet MSL. The lettered areas provide for separation services for participating aircraft and are adjacent to amended Part 93 airspace. This shows the FAA proposal with the Part 93 segments, Elmendorf Class D, and Restricted Area 2203. While the Class C and Part 93 segments are proposed to be modified, our 2203 remains unchanged.
Hello, my name is Aaron Novak, and I'm an Anchorage TRACON Air Traffic Control Staff Support Specialist. We will now review each area, starting with the proposed surface area of the Class Charlie. This is Area A. The floor of the airspace begins at the surface, extending upwards to 4,100 feet, and the western and southern borders remain the same. While to the east, the area extends to Lake Otis Parkway. To the north-northwest, the boundary is extended to protect the runway 15 final approach course. This graphic shows Area B. This area is the primary entry and exit point for aircraft flying to and from Merrill Field and Lake Hood Seaplane Base. Area B provides separation from aircraft operating on runway 6 at Elmendorf and replaces existing Part 93 special air traffic rules. The airspace floor will be 1,400 feet MSL, and the ceiling will be 4,100 feet MSL. Area C, shown here, will provide consistent airspace ceiling of 4,100 feet over Merrill Field and Lake Hood. Area C will allow ATC to separate aircraft transiting above Lake Hood and Merrill class deltas. This graphic depicts Area D with a floor of 1,200 feet MSL and a ceiling of 4,100 feet MSL. Area D would normally be established to the surface as a part of the Anchorage surface area. Consideration for non-participating aircraft was incorporated into the updated proposal at the ad hoc committee's recommendation, and the floor was raised to 1,200 feet MSL. Area D allows ATC to provide necessary flight information to aircraft arriving runways 25 right, runway 25 left, or departing runway 7 right and runway 7 left at Anchorage International. Aircraft transiting to and from Lake Hood or Merrill will be required to contact ATC while operating in this area. Area E, normally a part of the inner 5 nautical mile surface area, has a floor of 600 feet MSL with a ceiling of 4,100 feet MSL. This area is shelved to allow access to Campbell Lake Seaplane Base and Flying Crown Airport without contacting ATC. Area F extends south from 5 nautical miles to 10 nautical miles. The floor of Area F would start at 1,400 feet MSL with a ceiling of 4,100 feet MSL. This area provides controlled terminal airspace for Anchorage departures and arrivals. Area G is located to the west of Anchorage Airport and extends from 5 nautical miles to 10 nautical miles. Traffic within Area G overflies the Fire Island Wind Farm and transits the ILS final approach course for Anchorage runway 7 right and runway 7 left. This airspace will extend from a floor of 700 feet MSL to a ceiling of 4,100 feet MSL. This airspace will extend from a floor of 700 feet MSL to a ceiling of 4,100 feet MSL. Area H is new and extends the Class Charlie to the west of Area G, encompassing the final approach courses for runway 7 right and runway 7 left. This area will provide traffic advisory and separation services between participating VFR aircraft and Anchorage arrivals and departures. Airspace in this area extends from a floor of 1,400 feet MSL to a ceiling of 4,100 feet MSL. Area I is an existing area. This airspace extends from a floor of 1,400 feet MSL to a ceiling of 4,100 feet MSL. Area J modifies the floor of the current Class Charlie. This area will provide traffic advisory service for participating and equipped VFR aircraft operating near Anchorage, Lake Hood, Merrill, and Elmendorf Air Force Base. It protects the Anchorage runway 15 and runway 33 corridor. The floor of this segment is 1,000 feet MSL, incorporating a recommendation made by the ad hoc committee, and extends to a ceiling of 4,100 feet MSL. Area K is new and extends the Class Charlie to the north of Area J, encompassing the final approach course and departure corridor for runway 15 and runway 33. This area will also provide traffic advisories and flight information to VFR aircraft that are operating in the vicinity of aircraft using runway 15. Area K extends from a floor of 2,000 feet MSL to a ceiling of 4,100 feet MSL. Area L will provide traffic advisory service for participating and equipped VFR aircraft operating in close proximity to IFR traffic at Anchorage, Merrill Field, and Elmendorf Air Force Base. Area L will allow for deconfliction between military and civilian aircraft. It will facilitate the use of Merrill Field approach and departure procedures, which include new area navigation RNAV and RNAV Alpha instrument procedures. Area L airspace extends from a floor of 1,400 feet MSL to a ceiling of 4,100 feet MSL. Area M is a new area that will overlay the Elmendorf class Delta. This area will provide traffic advisory service for aircraft transiting over Elmendorf. This airspace extends from a floor of 3,000 feet MSL to a ceiling of 4,100 feet MSL. Next, we will preview the amended Part 93 Special Air Traffic Rules. As recommended by the Ad Hoc Committee, the new Lake Otis segment shown here, will allow VFR aircraft transiting east of Anchorage to navigate under arrival and departure traffic at Anchorage International. It aligns with Lake Otis Parkway to give pilots a visual reference. This segment extends from the surface to 1,199 feet MSL. The Goose Bay segment, located above the Goose Bay Airport, Z40, protects transiting VFR aircraft from Elmendorf, arrival and departure traffic. Extending from 1,900 feet to 6,000 feet MSL, this segment requires that aircraft utilize an operating transponder with Mode S and two-way radio, more commonly known as squawking and talking. This segment is intended to provide advisory service to VFR and military traffic, while allowing non-participating aircraft to navigate around this airspace. The Valley segment is specifically intended to provide traffic advisory service to aircraft operating in the vicinity of concentrated military activities at Elmendorf Air Force Base. Extending from 2,500 feet MSL to 6,000 feet MSL, this segment requires that aircraft utilize an operating transponder with Mode S and two-way radio, squawking and talking again. It will provide advisory service to VFR aircraft operating near fighters and heavyweight turbulence generators, while allowing non-participating aircraft to navigate around this airspace.
Now that we have reviewed the various areas in the proposal, we want to show you how it all goes together. Anchorage serves the broadest range of aircraft, from the most advanced military fighter jets to the most basic piston aircraft. This Class C serves to organize and manage this diverse flow of traffic while balancing the need for access by all aviation users. The next two slides show the proposed operational flows in the Anchorage Bowl. The flows are referred to by the primary runways in use at Anchorage International: runway 7 and 33 flow, and runway 15 and 25 flow. These flows will provide enhanced separation between military and civilian operations. The first flow we'll look at is runway 7 and 33. In this flow, aircraft predominantly land from the west on runway 7 right and 7 left, and depart to the north from runway 33. Smaller aircraft may also depart to the southwest from runway 7 left. Aircraft operations at Merrill Field and Lake Hood will generally remain the same. Merrill IFR traffic will transition between Anchorage and Elmendorf operations. In a 1525 flow, aircraft will typically depart runway 15 and runway 25 left, while traffic will primarily arrive to runway 15 and runway 25 right. In all configurations, Elmendorf will predominantly use runway 17 for arrivals and runway 24 for departures. Traffic, weather conditions, and other factors may require the use of runway 6 and runway 35. The next few slides will show real traffic conflicts between participating aircraft and non-participating VFR aircraft. Here, Giant 551 Heavy, a Boeing 747, was cleared for the approach to Anchorage runway 15. A non-participating VFR aircraft was flying northwestbound at the bottom of the Class C at 1,400 feet, then climbed to 1,800 feet, entering the Class C from below. A traffic advisory was issued to Giant 551 Heavy. The approach clearance was canceled, and control instructions were issued to reestablish separation. Giant 551 Heavy was able to see the traffic, reported it in sight, but still climbed to 2,200 feet after receiving a collision alert. In this situation, Stingray 1506 was cleared for the approach to Anchorage runway 7 left. A non-participating VFR float plane was flying in the vicinity. Air traffic control issued a traffic advisory to Stingray 1506 as they were descending along the approach. Air traffic control then issued a traffic alert, canceled Stingray's approach clearance, and the aircraft began rapid descent after receiving a collision alert. In example 3, Giant 8872 Heavy, a Boeing 747, was cleared for the approach to Elmendorf runway 6. A participating VFR aircraft was southbound over Point McKenzie. The VFR aircraft was instructed by ATC to maintain visual separation with the heavy jet, which the VFR aircraft had previously reported in sight. Even though the VFR had Giant in sight, they turned towards the heavy, and Giant 8872 received a collision alert in the flight deck, requiring a climb to avoid the VFR aircraft.
Hello again. I'll be discussing the FAA's rulemaking and environmental review process next. Any changes to the Class Charlie must go through the rulemaking process. Rulemaking is the process federal agencies use to make new regulations. Any proposed rule goes through numerous reviews, and the public has the opportunity to comment. The FAA is required to review and consider every comment. Once the agency has read and considered all comments, it decides whether to go ahead with the final rule. The agency may adopt a final rule that is identical or similar to the initial proposal, or it might make changes based on the comments. As shown on the slide, this informal airspace meeting is an integral part of the process that comes before the notice of proposed rulemaking. Before any changes can be made, the proposed rule must also go through an environmental review, which is required by the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. NEPA requires that the agency evaluate environmental, social, and economic effects of the proposed action. The graphic on this slide depicts the FAA's general process for all projects. It is not specific to this project, but it will be applied. We're about to begin the live Q&A session. Here's a summary of the next steps in the process. Comments must be received no later than October 24th, 2025. The FAA will consolidate and consider all comments. The FAA will incorporate relevant safety modifications. Once the notice of proposed rulemaking has been published in the Federal Register, there will be a separate 60-day comment period. We encourage you to submit your written comments. You may do so by addressing them to the FAA via mail or via email to the addresses shown on the screen. Please again, submit your comments no later than October 24th, 2025. You can also visit our website by scanning the QR code. Today's meeting is being recorded and will be available on FAA's YouTube channel for future viewing. All right, Alaska, we are live. If you're just joining us, I'm Brian Oakes, and I will be the moderator for the informal airspace meeting. I'd like to cover 3 procedural items before we start the Q&A. First, if you're having technical issues, you can text our tech support number anytime during the meeting at 949-478-0253. Second, this portion will last for about 60 minutes. If you joined us last night, welcome back. Third, we are live streaming on the FAA's YouTube channel. The recording will be posted on our website after the meeting concludes. Before we begin answering live questions submitted by the audience, we will first allow time for each attendee to speak who registered to do so. We will go in alphabetical order, read the attendee's name, then unmute their microphone in the Zoom webinar. You may speak for up to 3 minutes, after which we will move on to the next speaker. Any instance of improper language will result in immediately being placed back on mute for the remainder of the webinar. Today, we have 6 registered speakers with 1 presentation. Mr. J.R. Gates, you're first. You have 3 minutes to speak. J.R., you out there? Sir, if you're speaking, we cannot hear you.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Loud and clear. 3 minutes.
Okay,
Go ahead, JR.
Thank you.
We just lost you, JR. JR, can you hear me? Hey, JR, we're going to mute you. We'll come back to you, sir. We're going to go on. The second presenter will be Marshall Severson, has a presentation. Marshall, you have 3 minutes. JR, we will circle back to you, sir.
Thank you, Brian. Marshall Severson, representative of the Alaska Aviation Safety Foundation to the ATOPS committee. And I want to thank FAA, State, Air Force, and the Airmen to getting us to this point. Want to share CNICARM low-level crossing study about quantifying how risky the special FAR 93 low-level crossing requirements are between Anchorage over CNICARM to the Point McKenzie area. And unequipped aircraft without a deviation must fly below 600 feet for approximately 3 miles over CNICARM waters. That's been in place for generations, that procedure. Expected to sunset in 2027, but still want to share the aspects of what that entails. There's approximately 23% of air traffic is non-ADS-B equipped, according to the FAA. And there is, as far as our study goes on crossing the CNICARM, we looked at 85 records, identified 9 accidents pertinent to CNICARM operations. One example was a PA-18 that in 2004 was destroyed 1.6 miles south of the north shore of CNICARM after departing Lake Hood on special VFR clearance. Probable cause was determined to be loss of control due to spatial disorientation in fog and low ceiling weather conditions. There was 1 fatality. It's 3 miles, as I mentioned, from shore to shore over the area, let's say from Merrill Field to the Point McKenzie area. And after potential loss of engine power, using a 172 as an example, 120 miles an hour, best glide speeds 80. There's exposure beyond gliding distance of about 6,840 feet out of 15,840 feet. And what that equates to is about 39 seconds of exposure over the water beyond gliding distance to the north shore or the south shore. So that is a real possibility to ditch in the water under that circumstances. Exposure time flown over the waters is relatively low, but what we'd like to state is that equipment with ADS-B out would allow for operations to be regularly conducted in Class C airspace at higher altitudes, providing greater best glide distances and more landing options should loss of power occur. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Our third presenter, Michael Scoder. Michael, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you for letting me participate again today. I still have concerns with Area J and for the non-participating aircraft. As I mentioned yesterday, I have a Super Cub equipped, I participate. But the jump on floor in 400 feet from 1,400 in areas I and L to 1,000 through Area J is not practical instantaneously. So there's going to be planes that either try to just maintain below 1,000 the whole point. It's going to be a real pressure point. From my perspective, it's also going to be very confusing, probably likely to have a lot of incursions into that because people aren't paying attention to that small portion. And looking at the approaches into runway 15 at International, both the ILS and the RNAV GPS, of course, the initial fixed point is CARD, which is at 3,000 foot intercept, and that's up in Area K, actually. And then the final approach fix is Kansi, and the the great work by the team so far has kind of extended the primary surface of Area A slightly up to have Kansi protected. That point on the glide slope should be 1,600 feet. From my perspective, I think a good solution to look at would be extending that boundary between Area A and J, some portion to provide these protections to the traffic coming in, landing Anchorage International. Say it was half of Area J and have it surface to 4,100. That would allow then Area J, the small one, to have a floor of 1,400 feet, which would be consistent that all departures coming in from the north through Area L or from the west through Area J or Area I, it's all 1,400 feet. And the new Area B at Merrill, it's all consistent. So you tell a new student, you tell a non-participating pilot, if you want to fly into Merrill or Lake Hood, you can go in at 1,200 or 1,300. Should be aware that, the tops of the trees out there are about 200 feet. And if planes don't, want to push a violation, they're flying 100 under it. So really in the current configuration of Area J, there's very little room. But I think making that change would bring more participating airplanes into the system that are equipped and are not participating, and would provide a reasonable path for the non-participating, all consistent with 1,400-foot floor. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Michael. And just really quick, the ad hoc committee really took a deep look at that. We can talk a little bit later on it, but moving that surface north cuts off the power line transition there, which is a prominent VFR following. So that was taken into consideration, and the floor of that area was proposed at 600, and we ended up raising it to 1,000 based on the ad hoc. But thank you, sir. Hey, our next presenter, Mr. Dennis Walker. Dennis, you have 3 minutes.
Hey, good afternoon. I just wanted to say real quickly there that you probably receive a lot of negative comments on the new airspace, but I'm actually one that, as a former military aviator, a commercial operator, and a GA operator, these changes are welcomed. Personally, I'd love to see a Mode C veil put around Anchorage, but I realize this is a compromise to going to the class Bravo. But yes, I welcome these changes and look forward to them being implemented. And maybe while airspace is being reconsidered, I don't know if maybe could look at Part 91, 215, paragraph 5, subparagraph 1, the requirement to have a transponder above 10,000 feet is not required in Alaska. I think that's kind of a old reg that doesn't need to be. It'd be nice that above 10,000 feet in the Anchorage area that we could also have the protections that aircraft above 10,000 feet could need to be transponder equipped. But in general, these changes, I welcome them. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Comments are welcome. Our next presenter, Mr. Adam White. Adam, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. I've already made some comments in the meeting yesterday, and just so I'm not going to go back over those, but as one of the co-chairs of the ad hoc committee, I just wanted to make sure that everybody heard from me on my perspective of how this process has gone. It's been a very, very productive process up to this point, and I don't have any anticipation in that changing. Matter of fact, it's been documented and proven already that the meeting yesterday versus today, some things have already been considered, and I know comments have already been submitted. So I just wanted to publicly state that I appreciate the FAA's efforts in this project and how the FAA supported the work of the ad hoc committee. We asked for a lot of things from the FAA, and we dug deep, very deep, and the FAA was very cooperative. I considered the things that they did above and beyond what they were required to do and mandated to do. that they want to see this project to be successful as well as we do as industry. And so I publicly thank the FAA for their efforts. The ad hoc process was very educational from my perspective to understand what the issues and requirements are for separations and how we all can integrate and work together in such a complicated and complex airspace. And so while we have a product that has changed significantly from the very beginning, it most likely will change a little bit moving forward based on inputs received during the comment period. And again, just wanted to thank the FAA for their process doing this and their engagement with the public. So with that, I'll surrender the rest of my time. Thank you.
Adam, thanks a lot. I just will circle back to your comments yesterday, and just for people that didn't go listen to it, one of them was Area B and Area L have the same floor and ceiling, and that was never answered in the session. So I just wanted to circle back and answer that real quick. That is known. They are the same at this time. Area Bravo, which was Charlie in the original proposal, changed altitudes multiple times. There's a lot of feedback on it. And if we end up the same, those will be consolidated into one unit. So appreciate that feedback. And, last presenter for the day, Mr. J.R. Gates. Floor is yours, sir.
Hi, I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. Can you guys hear me okay right now?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I'm having trouble navigating away from the window on the Zoom call to my notes, so I'm just gonna summarize by saying I'm a Birchwood pilot that flies north of the restricted airspace of Elmendorf to cross Kinnick Arm and travel outside of and north of the current Class C airspace. So I'm really interested in the changes that are being made to provide the separation for the IFR traffic going into Elmendorf. I'm nervous about the floors of the special VFR segments, Goose Bay and Valley. I feel like they're a little too low to do some of the maneuvering that the VFR traffic has to do in that area, specifically around Goose Bay. There's a lot of student pilots that have some challenges maintaining their altitudes when they work the patterns within Goose Bay. There's a lot of transitioning traffic that goes north-south into Hood and Merrill, and also east-west into Birchwood in that airspace. And we just need as much space as possible to maneuver safely and provide our own.
We lost you, JR.
Oh man, I was doing so good. Do you guys got me now?
Yeah, you're back.
So I'm just nervous. The floor of the Goose Bay special airspace there is too low for everything that needs to happen above that Goose Bay airspace. So there's enough space for transitioning north-south and east-west aircraft to safely coordinate and maneuver above the pattern traffic of Goose Bay. 1900 is going to be a problem in that area, and I was just going to suggest, if possible, maybe it hasn't been considered enough about what the Birchwood pilots are doing transitioning that area, but if that floor could be raised to match the Valley segment, that would be very helpful. Just to get it from 19 to 2500 would be great for us. And beyond that, I'm sorry I can't navigate to my image, but the airspace that covers Kinnick Arm coming down to 1400 in that area, that's a little low for crossing that Kinnick Arm. As a non-participating aircraft, we like to be about 2000 in that airspace. I don't know if you could continue the radius of the airspace that is slightly to the west with a 2,000-foot floor, if you could continue that around in the same arc to give us a little bit more elevation as we cross Kinnick Arm, as aircraft are going from Birchwood down to south or down to the southwest Kinnick Cook Inlet area. So that's all my comments.
Thanks, JR. I'm going to adjust those real quick. That way we can just get those out. The Goose Bay segment, we did do extensive look at it. It was proposed as Class Charlie originally, and we're reducing that. We have raised the floor of that to 19 from our original proposed to 14 to provide a gap in there. We have reduced the requirements of Part 93 from Class Charlie to not require 91-225 and just require 91-215 Mode C transponder. So there is a plan there to segregate aircraft that can go through equipped without ADSB or ADSB or unequipped below, needing to talk to Anchorage Approach Control with that reduced requirements, as well as some VFR transition routes that are going to go in and around the local area for people to fly and segregate. Also moving out of there, the C-17s that are always holding over Goose Bay, take that big restriction out. Anchorage TRACON and Elmendorf are working on an area to hold those aircraft. So those are details that are still in the works and process, but they address your concern. And the other piece over the Kinnick arm we'll talk in depth about. But currently today, when you hit that North Shore or you're coming from that North Shore, you need to be under 1400. If you're above 1400, you can't be there as an unequipped aircraft, as it's mandated to have ADSB out required. So while it looks different with the Part 93 not there, the requirement really hasn't changed, and you shouldn't be above that altitude as you're crossing the Kinnick Arm and you hit the North Shore, or if you're at the North Shore coming southbound. So I hope that clarifies some of your comments, but I do appreciate you stepping up and having the conversation. And with that, that was our speakers for today. Next, we will move on to the live Q&A based on the questions we are receiving from Zoom and FAA's social media platforms. But before we begin, I'd like to introduce our panelists. You heard them on the pre-recording. Excuse me, Mr. Clark Wolverton, Support Manager, Anchorage TRACON, and Mr. Aaron Novak, Staff Support Specialist, Anchorage TRACON. And we did hear a lot of great questions yesterday submitted with the meeting registrations and during the workshop. So we will be covering some of those. So you will hear some of the same answers tonight, as they were very good questions with answers, and it helps people get some clarity. And we received some emails overnight on some of those pieces. So before we take our first question, I want to ask Aaron and Clark a question. At the beginning of the meeting, we've looked at a lot of information about the airspace segments and how they'll change. Can you tell me a little bit more about the ad hoc process and how you came to decide on this proposed airspace?
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate the question. I want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon for our second informal airspace meeting and all the input and questions that have been provided so far. And please, as Brian mentioned, put your comments in the questions in the Q&A, and we'll definitely be happy to address those during this session. So kind of backing up a little bit from the starting at the ad hoc process, the initial ATAPS project started with a couple feasibility studies and such that then led to the FAA establishing a local collaborative work group that was air traffic facilities here in the Anchorage Bowl area. Anchorage Tower, Anchorage TRACON, Anchorage Center, Merrill Tower got together, looked at this whole airspace redesign process as a holistic view. As was covered in the initial video, main driver for this whole process was Elmendorf extending that north-south runway that will be renumbered at runway 1735. That runway will be extended to 2,000 feet, and Elmendorf is going to predominantly land runway 17 and depart runway 24, kind of changing their overall traffic pattern and the way that airplanes are run. As a result, the determination was made that in order to accomplish that, the current Class Charlie airspace would not be sufficient. So as a result, we have the proposal here tonight. And then also there's new instrument procedures that are going into place at Anchorage International, Merrill, and also Elmendorf as well. So really a holistic view to kind of cover everything that we have going forward. So the ad hoc committee took the initial proposal out of the FAA CWG, which you can see on your screen here to the left. That was the agency's proposal that was presented to ad hoc. So you can see the version on the right is what we are presenting here this afternoon. A couple examples of the G section on the left compared to the hotel H section on the right kind of got shrunk. As was mentioned earlier, the Goose Bay and Valley segments for Part 93, which we'll talk a lot about here this afternoon. Originally, that was Class Charlie airspace. So it was a lot of compromise out of kind of ad hoc and extensive conversations of how all the aircraft transitioning in and out of the airspace and making sure the non-participant aircrafts have enough airspace to kind of fly, and that was a big focal point of ad hoc. So January 2025, the ATAPS ad hoc committee convened, part of a much larger process, which I discussed about, years of data and work to get to that point. And the ad hoc committee included commercial, private, military, airport representatives from the local area. So it was really a large swath of individuals who were able to kind of take the agency's here proposal. And with that, I'll turn it over to Clark for second half.
Thanks, Aaron. As we discussed yesterday, the way we came to decide on the proposed airspace is really driven by the desire to protect non-participating aircraft from the common IFR traffic corridors in the Anchorage area. That was the focus, and I think you can see how it is we're trying to accomplish it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the ad hoc committee gave the recommendations back to the agency in June 2025. They presented a proposal, and then the one on the right is the agency's further revisions based upon their proposal. And that's kind of what we have here today.
Yep.
Hey, Aaron, that brings up a good topic about the comment we received a presenter yesterday and the comment overnight. Can you talk about the change that we made this morning to the Lake Otis segment?
Yeah, that's a great point there. I don't know if our team in the back is able to pull up that same slide again. It's a little big, not zoomed in per se, but the Lake Otis segment came up yesterday from a great question from a gentleman who's at Sky Harbor Airport here in the Anchorage area. A small presentation. Excuse me, a small airport here. He gave a nice presentation. So you can see here, down on the south side there, it's the Lake Otis segment. It's that kind of blue, light blue box. Currently, the proposal, the south boundary goes to O'Malley Road. So for people familiar with Anchorage, kind of O'Malley there is where the golf course, the zoo is further up the road. But with the proposed Lake Otis Part 93 segment that would just require communications with ATC, they don't have the ability safely, effectively to get into Sky Harbor when they land south. It would be a quick comm check-in with an air traffic facility and then CTAF. So as a result of that recommendation and talking it over this morning with the collaborative work group, we've made the modification already where that Part 93 south boundary will get shifted north just about a mile to align with Abbott Road there. So that should allow extra space and should be very similar to what the sewer segment is as well.
Yes, sir. Sharing the same boundary that the Seward segment is and making that cutout for safe arrivals and departures there at Sky Harbor. So just highlights the process and how it works. So if you have comments to make, please use the Q&A box, type your comment in. You can also send emails or mail to those addresses that we list. Get your comments in. If we're overlooking something, by all means, this is a collaborative process and we're looking to make the best airspace moving forward for the notice to propose rulemaking. And that's the purpose of our informal airspace meetings. So moving on, this question we did receive yesterday. When small aircraft fly over Knik Arm at less than 1,000 feet AGL, they can't make it across if they have an engine out, requiring an aircraft to glide. What's being done to mitigate this crossing for emergency situations for non-equipped aircraft?
That's a great question, Brian. I'll take that one. So overall, safety is paramount to the flying public. That's our North Star here at the FAA to ensure safety here when it comes to aviation and air traffic. So as you can see on the screen here, Area B, our proposal is the floor there of 1,400 feet up to 4,100 feet. So that kind of addresses the initial question about anything less than 1,000. As Marshall had mentioned in his presentation with the current Part 93 at 600 feet, obviously that has some issues when it comes to if you're losing an engine with the glide distance, but our current proposal having the Charlie starting at 1,400 feet will allow
VFR, non-equipped aircraft to go out of the Merrill class Delta, Lake Hood class Delta, up to 1,399 feet northbound, be in the respective deltas until they hit the North Shore there, where they, if they want to continue as a non-participant, they can go northbound below 1,400 feet, kind of underneath what is Area L of the class Charlie. As we've already touched on, the ad hoc committee discussed at length the Kinnick Arm crossing. Most of the ad hoc process, I had the privilege of representing the FAA there with Brian Oakes as our project manager and Marty Berry, our contractor. We're there as FAA SMEs during this process, and I can attest to the non-equipped was discussed at length with all the various possibilities of how it interacts with our initial proposal, the new instrument flight procedures, the tracks that they fly in, and such. So I can assure you it was discussed extensively. And again, especially out of ad hoc and even outside of ad hoc, it's acknowledged by all that the Kinnick Arm is a very, very congested airspace. And kind of running concurrently with this informal airspace meeting and a part of our ATAPS project, we have a VFR task force that the Anchorage TRACON air traffic manager, Josh Coleman, has kicked off a VFR task force with another large swath of individuals from our air traffic facilities, FSDO, military representatives, and our kind of local aviation interests are going to be discussing these VFR routes, transition routes, looking at the Salmonbook routings and how all this stuff can be changed, augmented, and kind of make the VFR flying across the Kinnick Arm a little bit more orderly than kind of the beehive's nest that it is today once you get outside of the deltas. So that kind of answers that question of 1,400 feet there of the floor.
So Aaron, just to be clear, beneath that shelf there, that Bravo 14 to 41, that's class Delta for both Lake Hood and Merrill.
That is correct. Yep.
Underneath there.
Yep. Class Delta will run to the North Shoreline. And then once you get past the North Shoreline, it'll be uncontrolled airspace if you stay under the Charlie.
As it is today with that 14 and 19 shelf. So anything in or above class Charlie, you're required for 91-225 ADSB out. And so the proposal really doesn't change that. And you can depart non-equipped beneath the Charlie under 1,400 feet. So that goes right into the next question. Getting from Ship Creek to Point McKenzie can't be done going under class Charlie airspace. How is this being mitigated for non-equipped aircraft?
Well, Brian, Aaron largely answered the question. The initial proposal was for that Charlie airspace to have a floor of 600 feet, but that was mitigated by raising it to 1,400 feet. And another way to mitigate it would be to equip so that you can fly higher if that's what you want to do. But those two things, one, it was taken from 600 up to 1,400 for the floor. And then if you equip, you can go above that if that's what you need.
Thanks, Clark. And I'll circle back to part of what Aaron's talking about with the VFR transition routes that are going in, around, through class Charlie and class Delta, are providing ways to segregate equipped from non-equipped. The same route could have a floor, a block altitude, and those that are equipped would be assigned inside the Charlie or above 1,400, and those non-equipped below, to avoid the compression of all aircraft that are going in that area into one altitude block. So there are a lot of things being in play, but very talented people working on a task force made up of local aviators, DOD, flight standards, local air traffic, that are coming up with all those routes to go in, around, and through the Charlie and Deltas. Are the proposed changes to Merrill and Lake Hood Class D boundaries across the arm under the Class Charlie?
Yes, they are. There's the boundary between Lake Hood and Merrill that runs from the south shoreline to the north shoreline. At the north end was moved about a third of a mile to the east, and that is the delta boundary that widens the Lake Hood entry and exit to the north and slightly narrows the Merrill entry and exit to the north.
And so those will continue to be surfaced to 2,500 in the main areas over Lake Hood and Merrill, but from mid-channel to the North Shore, that shelf will be surfaced to 1399 with Charlie above it 14 to 41.
Correct, and it actually starts 2,500 feet south of the and parallel to the runway 6 final at Elmendorf. And the reason behind that is wake turbulence protection.
Yes, sir. Thanks for that clarification. So here's a question came in right as we were shutting down yesterday. We wanted to circle back to it. I was explaining about in June of 2024, one of the graphics we showed to the ad hoc committee showed 10,000 plus flights in a 15-day period in and out of Lake Hood and Merrill in a V-shaped funnel that's basically between Anchorage 1.5 and Elmendorf 1.7. And the question is, have you looked at how many of them would be required to participate? And so that was one of the questions the ad hoc committee came with. We did a lot of deep PDARS data research, pulling aircraft call signs and type aircraft off of that equipage. And and Marshall led to it earlier, is just under 24% within the 20 nautical miles of Anchorage International are equipped, or I'm sorry, are unequipped. And so it's not the entirety of those 10,000 flights, while some of those 10,000 over the 15 days is the same aircraft. The number came back just under 24% traffic unequipped. Could you please clarify the transponder requirements for the Goose Bay and Valley segments? Will the proposal require Mode C or Mode S in these segments? Aaron, I know we misspoke here on the recording. Can you just clarify that for us?
Yes, and I apologize out to the group here of that incorrect statement there in the pre-recording, but to correct the record straight here, in the Goose Bay and Valley segments particularly, it'll just be the 91.215, which is communications with Anchorage TRACON, and then a Mode Charlie requirement only with Mode C and altitude. There will not be an ADSB requirement, so I do apologize and want to correct the record on that. Additionally, with that, you will not have an ADSB requirement above those Part 93 segments as well. And to elaborate as well, those Part 93 segments were a direct kind of compromise coming out of ad hoc, where the agency, our initial proposal was Class Charlie there for the runway 17 final protection. But the Part 93 there allows squawking, talking, communications, but no ADSB requirement.
That's great. So that applies to both the Goose Bay and the Valley segments, that it's communication with ATC and Mode C transponder 91.215 requirement.
Yep, that's exactly right. And then if I may kind of piggyback off what when you Brian there spoke to JR's question about Birchwood on the altitudes, kind of just to go out there again about how this project with runway 17, the final coming into Elmendorf, those altitudes are very specific on the floors there, because you're going to be having instrument flight procedures, ILSs going to runway 17, that those floors are set to make sure we have an adequate protection for the finals of fast mover fighters coming on high instrument approaches in. And we just want to make sure there's enough kind of separation there between those non-participants below the Part 93 as well.
Thanks. And can you circle down to the Lake Otis segment again, as we're talking about requirements for Part 93? While we wait for additional questions to come in, submit them via the Zoom Q&A link, or if you're on the YouTube, type them into the chat and our team will field them up to our panelists here as we're waiting for more questions. Aaron, can you speak to the comm requirements and any other equipage for the Lake Otis segment?
Yes, absolutely. So the Lake Otis segment, to kind of go back on that as well, that area in there where you see area Delta, which is on our proposal 1,200 to 4,100 feet. That area D initially had a proposal of Class Charlie to the surface. So as a result, there was a kind of another compromise there of instead of having that Class Charlie to the surface, which would require those aircraft who would want to go into Lake Hood, Delta's airspace primarily, or possibly Merrill if they're going to kind of use it to go around, would require transponder, communications, Mode C, and then ADSB as well. But as a result of shelving Area D, the decision was made coming out of ad hoc by the agency to make that a Part 93 segment there that we've called the Lake Otis segment, which is from the surface to 1,199 feet. It's going to operate very similar to what you see today with the sewer segment, having a very similar footprint of where it's just communications with air traffic. So that'll be something to the extent of you'll need to be speaking to either Anchorage Approach, Merrill Tower, Lake Hood Tower, et cetera. And we're still working on the final verbiage there of how that will read. But it should operate very similar to how you have the Seward segment of just communications. So there will be no ADSB requirement and there will be no transponder requirement in order to operate in that area.
Excellent. And one of the main reasons there for that shelving and putting the Part 93 was to avoid pushing our general aviation unequipped aircraft to the east towards the mountains, turbulent air, and being able to accommodate those aircraft traversing in and out of Merrill and Lake Hood, as well as transition in the airspace as a whole. So another good recommendation that came out of the ad hoc and was able to be accommodated by local air traffic. Can you explain how I can fly in this airspace if I do not equip?
Pretty much the same as you do today, under it or around it. And I believe that's a great step that the ad hoc committee took, was to make sure that capability was still there. And I think they did a good job of that with their recommendations. I want to go back, Brian, to the comments from the gentleman that flies out of Birchwood. I can understand and you touched on it somewhat, the floor of 1,900 feet in the Goose Bay area and the 2,500 feet in the Valley segment. I just wanted to add the localizer elevation for runway 17 in those spots. On the south side of the Goose Bay Part 93 segment, the localizer elevation, or excuse me, the glide slope elevation for runway 17 is right at 2,500 feet. So that's 600 feet above the floor of that segment. And then at the southern part of the Valley segment, where the floor is 2,500 feet, the glide slope elevation for runway 17 will be approximately 3,300 feet. So that's an 800-foot buffer there. So, and that's much better than what we have today. So,
and to piggyback off of that as well, as I mentioned, Elmendorf will predominantly be landing 17, departing runway 24. Runway 6, will be utilized as necessary under certain situations if the north-south runway is closed, snow removal, something happened to the runway as well. But something to also keep in mind is the flight paths will be changing out of Elmendorf. We'll have different fighter recoveries that will be coming in with the fighters coming from the MOAs up to the north. There is one out to the west. So you'll have different flight paths and expect fighters to be flying high ILS approaches. So they'll be entering that valley segment up at about 6,000 feet, kind of descending very rapidly down the localizer, or down the glide slope on the localizer coming in. So kind of just looking for that protection, and definitely a good compromise of it not being Class Charlie for for our users who don't have ADS-B. But expect a lot if you're participating and you have a transponder, Mode C, ADS-B. Expect very little change from what you can do now versus what you can do in the future. It'll just be the non-participating. We understand there will be some changes, but the big goal is safety in mind with the new flight paths that will all be happening.
One more added gee whiz comment here, Brian, is another thing that the gentleman requested was consideration of extending the floor of Area K, which is 2,000 feet, around to the east to, part of Area L to become an area with a floor of 2,000 feet. However, where the 1-7 glide slope enters the Area M, or the Elmendorf airspace, the glide slope elevation there is 2,040 feet. So if the floor was 2,000 feet there, that would not give very much protection. So.
Thanks, Clark. That'd be very similar to the same conversation for the 3-degree ILS going into runway 15 and dropping that from 3.2. You want to talk about that floor of I in relation to the glide slope there? I'm not sure.
Yeah, are you talking about Area J with the?
Well, yeah, I'm sorry. I was looking at the initial proposal. Area J, keeping it open to have the power line transition available for a VFR reference point, and then
Right.
the floor of J versus the glide slope of 15, as it is today, with a small space between it versus the goal of what we're trying to do. Thanks, sir.
Yeah. Today's a 3.2 glide slope is in effect, and where it crosses the southern boundary of Area J, that's 1,637 feet right now. It's just slightly outside of Kansas, and so it's slightly above the 1,600 feet. And in the future, the plan is to go to a 3-degree glide slope for the benefit of the users. And it will be approximately 1,540 feet at that point. And so the 1,000-foot floor goes protects well now and still into the future.
Thanks, Clark.
Yep.
After these airspace changes, how will FAA handle any changes needed in the future?
I'll take that one there, Brian. So the intent of this process is to resolve, modify, and review all the safety issues. If more concerns come up in the future, the process will still include input from those outside the FAA be involved in the process. So if there's any changes, we'll kind of go through a process accordingly. And if there needs to be new wholesale changes with modifications to Class Charlie, et cetera, we'll be doing this same sort of process we are now in the future if that were to arise.
Thanks. And it is rulemaking action, which is required by law to go through all the steps that we're addressing now. So if we need to make changes in the future, same process would be handled. Have GA pilot groups, such as the Alaska Airmen's Association, been consulted on this change? The answer is absolutely yes, as well as AOPA have been involved in our early conversations. Both were very instrumental in the ad hoc process, heard the FAA's initial presentation, and President there, Adam White, was one of the co-chairs with Mr. Alex Moss from Anchorage International. So not only GA, but our air carriers and industry and other partners were all represented, and we had lots of heavyweight with general aviation of all types of equipage represented on the ad hoc committee that provided their response back to the FAA with a lot of the changes that we incorporated. Can you tell us more about the TCAS alerts and how close the aircraft were?
Yeah, that's a great question there, Brian. So TCAS stands for Traffic Collision Avoidance System. And overall, TCAS works by having piece of equipment in the flight deck of one or both airplanes that are involved in the incident. There could be more if you have airplanes in very close proximity to another, but tells an aircraft kind of whether to climb or descend based upon if another aircraft is projected to come in very close proximity to that aircraft, to the other aircraft it's analyzing. So TCAS events are a statistical indicator of a problem that may manifest into an aircraft collision. So the goal of TCAS is to avoid a collision at all possible. Circling that back to how that kind of plays into this ATAPS process with the Class Charlie modification, it began when the process began here when the United States Air Force proposed an extension of the north-south runway at Elmendorf. Because Anchorage, Elmendorf, and Merrill are independent airports, the need was identified to evaluate airspace as a whole to make the operation safer and more efficient. As you can see here on the screen, you have all the blue kind of tracks, and then the heavy blue lines are where all the aircraft are condensing at a higher volume. You can kind of see where the tracks are, how it's overlaid with our proposed Class Charlie there with the Part 93 segments as well. So with that north-south runway being extended, you can see there how you have a lot of the blue lines there. The initial proposal, as I mentioned before, was to have Class Charlie up there, but you now have the Part 93 kind of compromise there that doesn't have the ADS-B requirement. And we acknowledge that there's heavy VFR traffic in that area, but with that runway and ILS, other approaches going into Elmendorf there, the decision was made with safety very much in mind, that there needed to be some protection for those instrument approaches going in there. And that's why you have the Goose Bay and Valley segment as today. Additionally, the yellow lines that kind of stretch out from the 7 finals at Anchorage and the 1-5 final at Anchorage, extending the Class Charlie out, especially on runway 15, was an important safety piece that our collaborative work group really put a lot of look into, and I know the ad hoc as well, of how that giving more protection to your aircraft landing Anchorage on instrument flight plans and how that affects the non-participating. And we have the floors that we do now to try to kind of find that right balance between the two. Because the reality is, with our current airspace and going into 1-5 especially, you get a lot of TCAS RAs, because once VFR aircraft, especially for not participating, as Clark had mentioned, you can get very close with our current Class Charlie proposal to what the 1-5 final is at. And I can have Clark kind of give us those math numbers as well, just to show how close they are. So just kind of wrapping it up here, this whole process is following our FAA Order 7400.2, where we're evaluating the current identified issues, proposed an airspace change to those issues, presented it to local users via ad hoc in these informal airspace meetings. And then that proposal allows for safe operations while allowing users to fly in and around the area with the least amount of impact. And I'll toss it to Clark here on those 1-5 numbers.
Yeah, currently where the 1-5 final crosses into today's Class C surface area, it's 1,430 feet is the elevation of the 1-5 glide slope there, and someone can be flying right there, non-participant, and be just under 1,400 feet. That's his requirement, to be under 1,400 feet. Well, I don't know what that means to someone, but if they're 1 foot under 1,400 feet, that's 31 feet of vertical separation between that aircraft and whatever's crossing above him, and so that's not enough.
And we have seen those. So I would like to add on a lot of talk about TCAS, but a lot of our data comes in from hazardous air traffic reports, from military aircraft filing those HATRs, hazardous air traffic report, on aircraft that are not equipped, as well as near midair collisions filed by commercial aviators and other flyers in the local area in regards to close proximity calls, where we just have numerous data with very close proximity of these aircraft coming together. I know FSDO has some data, and NTSB has a bunch of data. There's a lot of information out there for close calls and proximity events. Will there be a letter of agreement, LOA, between Anchorage Tracon and Merrill Tower to permit entry into the Area B Class Charlie if it's not possible for an aircraft departing Merrill to establish two-way radio comms with approach prior to entering Area B due to approach frequency congestion? Or will aircraft be expected to orbit south of the Area B in the Merrill Class Delta if comms with approach cannot be established?
Yeah, Brian, that's a valid
I'll
question.
do that one.
Yeah, I'll take that one. So ultimately, kind of departing Merrill as you do now, you have the current Class Charlie to the north there that is 1,400 feet to 1,900 feet. So it's going to operate very similar to how you are kind of operating today, where if an aircraft's receiving radar services from Anchorage Approach, you're going to have a transponder, you'll have both the altitude readout, and you'll be having ADS-B, because right now, if you want to go through that current Charlie airspace north of the North Shoreline, you'll need ADS-B to go in the Charlie, or even above the Charlie, up to 10,000 feet with that ADS-B requirement. You'll get a VFR squawk code from Merrill, as you would today, and then you'll continue outbound with establishing communications prior to entering the Class C and talk to Anchorage Tracon as soon as you're able. However, coming inbound, you must establish two-way communications with Merrill Tower prior to entering the Class Delta. So kind of as we've talked a little bit about, if you are receiving radar services from Anchorage Tracon, and you're doing that today, expect no real changes going into the future with this design if you're out there. In the practice area, coming from a place up to the north, or you're doing flight training, you're getting flight following, expect to be handed off to Merrill Tower. Just as you would today, even if you're in the Class Charlie or if you're not in the Class Charlie. If you're a non-participating aircraft, with our proposed airspace, you'd be below Area L, so you'll be surface to 1,399 feet. And if you do not want to receive services from Anchorage Tracon, you would contact Merrill Tower prior to the North Shoreline there in order to enter their Class Delta, because as I've stated, the Class Delta there at the North Shoreline would be surface to 1,399 feet. So it would be your requirement to contact Merrill Tower directly if you're not talking to Anchorage Tracon already.
I would say that's probably noted already in the work group that will be part of our outreach and training for those folks with Part 93 going away. It'd be a lot of education. Earlier communication with Lakewood and Merrill will be a lot better. You don't want to wait until you're right there at the shoreline to request access and get assigned to an at or below or at or above altitude with that. So lots of education, lots of outreach will be coming out for sure. Will there be any procedural or technology changes for air traffic controllers in air traffic facilities with the airspace modifications?
Yes, there will be procedural changes which are being worked on now, and some technological helps that we currently do not use that we will be using to sequence and be efficient in how we handle the aircraft in and out of the airports here. So yes, there will be helps that the controllers will have that they are not currently using. We're looking forward to that.
Yeah, some new technologies for sure as they continue to evolve out of headquarters and test sites. One will be the first test bed for utilizing CRDA, Converging Runway Display Aid, to two separate airports that are converging. It basically casts a shadow of an aircraft from 7 over into Elmendorf's traffic pattern so that the Tracon can sequence behind that aircraft to basically provide a gap between the real aircraft at Elmendorf and the real aircraft at Anchorage. So in the event both aircraft go around, they're not at a tie and you're not eyeballing where they need to be turned on the final at. And if they both go around, you're not eyeballing where they're at over the east side of Anchorage. So a lot of advances in technology, they continue to come out. MITRE is continuing to produce great things for our future. And as those unfold, there's some that are really important that will be coming out to Anchorage area as well. There's a couple procedural questions here. What is the FAA hoping to get out of this meeting? So this is an informal airspace meeting. It's part of the process for rulemaking. It's required for a Class Charlie, even a Class Bravo. You can also use it for other pertinent airspace changes like Part 93. So we are utilizing that. This gives us additional information to consider while we develop our proposal that we take to the Federal Register in our notice to propose rulemaking, such as the change for Sky Harbor that came already out of yesterday's meeting to move the south boundary to allow those aircraft there to operate in and out without any comms or having to do a change in communications or frequency while they're in close base landing to the south there, or as a departure to the north, keeps them in their base turn over unpopulated golf course area to reduce noise on communities. So there's lots of good information, and that's what we're after from the comments and concerns and presentations out of these informal airspace meetings. When are we planning to start this change? The goal of this is February 18, 2027, lining up with Elmendorf's change to their runway and when it will be available. So February 18th, 2027 is the FAA's goal, and all that subject to change as we continue down the rulemaking process, right? We go to NPRM, notice to propose rulemaking, 60-day public comment, and then we have to go through the final rule process. What is the next step of this process, and will we get to provide additional comments? So basically answered this, jumped ahead of myself, not knowing this question was coming. So we finish this up, this part of the process. We will run this through an FAA using some subject matter experts from the field as well on a safety risk management panel. We don't want to take something to the notice to propose rulemaking without running it through a safety evaluation. Any changes that would be needed to come out of that safety, we would mitigate those safety hazards, make any additional changes, and then we send this off to our headquarters where they put it into the Federal Register for a notice to propose rulemaking, which allows for 60 days public comment. After that, we make any additional changes based on substantive feedback, and anything that we see can come up that we don't know about that could get told to us. We make those changes, and then we recommend for final rule. But concurrently with that, the environmental side of the house will be running through their requirements and Federal Register entries where additional comments can be made. And while it's environmental in nature, if a aeronautical question does come into that avenue, we do address it, we evaluate it, and we do look at it. So multiple spots still to weigh in. On top of that, we've got side work groups happening for VFR transition routes. We've got University of Alaska Anchorage champion working with local aviators and flight schools to identify and chart practice training areas. So there's a lot of pieces to the pie that are concurrently running that you may hear about and have the opportunity at local meetings to talk and weigh in on various things that are in conjunction with, but not specifically rulemaking. So lots of opportunities for the flying public to still make comments and be involved in the change process. Would it be helpful to explain the FAA's goal of making vertical separations of 500 feet when it used to be okay to have only 300 feet?
Sure. The 300 feet, I believe, comes from the segregation that was put in place with Part 93 the way it is today. And it never was separation, but it was a way to help. It was a step towards separation. But 500 feet is the standard for separation, vertical separation between an IFR and a VFR in the airspace that we are using. And as long as there's no wake turbulence involved. But the direction we're headed is the right direction, going from 300 to 500. So.
And to piggyback off, oh, go ahead, Brian.
All you, sir.
And to piggyback off of that, how we have the current Part 93, as Clark had mentioned, in the Merrill segment, particularly where the floor there is 600. You could have aircraft inbound on the approach there on the far east side of Merrill down around 900 feet. So you naturally have about 600 feet so of the segregation. And that doesn't take into account mode C deviation that could occur. And our air traffic rules allow for a tolerance of plus or minus 299 feet, so just under 300. So there could be that rare instance if you have a VFR aircraft coming into Merrill that's off by 299 high, and then you have an aircraft inbound to Merrill that's off by 299 low. Those aircraft could be flip-flopped on each other, and they're all kind of operating within what the rules of the road are presented as they are today. So we're definitely trying to steer away from there and utilize this new airspace to provide a better safety for all users involved using the airspace.
Thanks, gentlemen. How does modifying the approach glide slope to runway 15 from 3.2 degrees to 3 degrees benefit users?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, Brian. So currently for runway 15, the ILS is set at 3.2 degrees. Standard is 3.0. You see that here at Anchorage for the 7s, and you see that all across the NAS. 3.2 degree glide slope. This came directly out of ad hoc, and I want to say it could have been meeting one. It was right away our commercial users, especially who fly out of Anchorage. This was kind of one of their number one priorities was 3.2. Gives a lot more instances of being unstable because they have to come down at a kind of higher descent rate than they would on a 3 degree. So 3 degree will allow them to go to standard, be more stable, and provide a kind of better safety for landing at a standard glide slope, be more stabilized.
Yeah, it is their number one hotspot for Atlas UPS as members of the ad hoc committee for unstable approaches into Anchorage International. So modifying that, we have to look at and accommodate things that affect all users in the airspace and try not to lean in one direction to favor air carriers, general aviation, DoD. It's a very complex mix of aviation in the Anchorage area, and balancing that is what we are attempting to do. So far, we have been hearing the requirements for the types of airspace. Thank you for that. How does the air traffic part of this work? Just having comms does not separate the aircraft. So will air traffic be restricting altitudes, routings, etc. of the VFR aircraft? For example, as aircraft are arriving Elmendorf on the ILS to 17, will VFR aircraft have to stay out of Goose Bay and Valley segments? Same with runway 24 departures and aircraft transitioning over the Kinnick arm.
That's a really insightful question. Appreciate that one. So myself as a former controller in my current role, I no longer keep currency. But when I was working the airplanes, and as the controllers are doing every single day, they're controlling aircraft when they're talking to them as necessary, especially when it comes to the VFR. So let's take today's example of you have the practice area and you have a number of people who are talking to air traffic, getting flight following advisories where there's other traffic, whether it's ski routes, C-17s, or instrument approaches into some of these satellite airports. Air traffic is going to be issuing you traffic advisories, and if you're getting too close to an aircraft, you should climb, you should descend. But ATC has kind of the big picture and view of they see what's departing Elmendorf, they see what's departing Merrill, what's coming off these satellite airports. So they can be proactive in issuing advisories or suggestions to the participating VFR aircraft. So kind of putting that into this question directly, if you are an aircraft in with a transponder, mode C, communications, and you call Anchorage TRACON and you want to go do flight training, say in that valley segment, and you're at 3,000 feet and you want to do kind of stalls, maneuvers in that area, if there's no traffic landing Elmendorf or runway 17, air traffic's not going to restrict you in what you're doing because they see there's no aircraft arriving runway 17. But let's say there's fighters that are coming in out of the MOAs, they may ask you, hey, could you move a couple miles to the west? Just don't go any farther east than the point you're at this point. And you'll be clear of the 17 fine. Only fighters go 2 miles off your left or your right, and you can kind of maneuver there accordingly. So one of our jobs is we kind of see the big picture here, and we can move airplanes as necessary. The question goes into, I mean, if you don't want to talk to air traffic, obviously you're not going to be able to go through those Part 93 segments. You'll need to deviate around accordingly, but we have the big picture in view, so we can definitely help you out. And we're here to provide a service to the user. So with safety, we're here to provide a service as well.
Are there any distinct ground features to identify the airspace boundaries from the air?
Another good question. So looking at the airspace holistically, there are some, but the pilot shouldn't solely rely on them. The intent is to establish GPS waypoints, to assist aircraft with flying the VFR route. So kind of piggybacking off the VFR routes we've talked about with this task force, we'll have new VP RNAV waypoints that will assist pilots in flying kind of in a quasi point to point where I know exactly certain landmarks are. We'll have various kind of highways in the skies, if you would call them that, to go from point to point. But as we had discussed earlier, when it comes to that Area A, Area J relationship, the power line is there. So that plays a pivotal point of knowing, hey, if I'm north of the power line, I'm going to be in this Area J. We talked about the Lake Otis segment, how we're following the roads down there with Elmore, Lake Otis, Abbott. Same sort of thing of how these deltas are built with Tudor Road curves. So when it's available, we definitely are trying to use those prominent landmarks on the ground, but we do know in certain areas, especially over open water, it's just very challenging to have any landmarks that are out there.
Will there be any changes to aircraft operating in and out of Sand Lake?
As Aaron has just mentioned, there is a group working, a VFR task force, working on routings to be efficient and get highways in the sky in and out of the different airports around here. And so that is being developed for the Sand Lake portion also. So more to come on that.
And as Sand Lake is in the Class Charlie surface area there for international, they have to talk with Anchorage Tower before they can even depart, get a squawk code, clearance to enter the airspace, and then how they proceed out from that Area A will be based upon those VFR routings and as directed by Anchorage Tower. So directly Sand Lake will see no close-in changes, but how you get in and out of Area A has the potential to change.
Since they are in that Area A and inside of the Class Charlie, the requirement would be for 91-225 to be ADS-B out equipped and thus be able to utilize any of the routes that get designed to get in and out. It's just a matter of if they're going to move slightly left, north, south, cross midfield, etc., as to what gets designed.
Yeah, exactly.
What are the specific operational differences between the Class Charlie and Part 93 in the Anchorage airspace?
So when you compare kind of what we have today to what's in the future that we're proposing here with the Class Charlie and Part 93, the differences compared to today's airspace are minor. The expanded areas of Class Charlie will only require two-way communication in places that they're currently not. If you're operating in the Class Charlie, there will be the Mode C requirement, as we've talked about, with the ADS-B requirement. We are proposing to expand the Class Charlie, as we've talked about, with more protection for runway 15 landers. And then also that results to when you're departing runway 33 as well, with our new SIDs that are coming off the airport at International. And then that area H that goes past Fire Island to give some more protection there for your arrivals that are coming in. We are going to have new approaches, arrivals, RMPs, and stuff as well. So where the aircraft are currently flying is not exactly where they'll be in the future based upon these flight tracks, but obviously when they line up for the runway, they'll be landing at their respective runways. So additionally, that ADS-B requirement that we've talked about, it's the same regulation that's been in place since January 1 of 2020. Part 93 will require operational transponder and Mode C and two-way communication for the Goose Bay and Valley segments that we have talked about here this afternoon. Those do not require ADS-B. Along with that Lake Otis segment down to the south will just be communications only. They will not require the transponder or the ADS-B. So once again, if you have the equipment, ADS-B, Mode C, transponder, a radio, and you're talking with air traffic participating, you can expect very little change to how you're flying in and out of the Anchorage Bowl area. The non-participating, as we've discussed, there will be some changes of where you can and can't fly, but overall safety is pivotal and ad hoc and all up to this process. It's been extensively looked at.
So just to circle back on the question itself, in and above Class Charlie, 91-225 requirement, ADS-B out. Part 93, Goose Bay and Valley segment. The rule is going to be proposed and written with communications with ATC plus 91-215, Mode C, and Lake Otis segment, just communications with air traffic control. Can you explain why the new Anchorage Class Charlie pushes traffic east to Lake Otis over a very congested area?
Sure, I'll take that one, Brian. So aircraft are required to remain east of Lake Otis Parkway today, unless talking to ATC because of the Seward Highway segment that's there right now. There will be no significant changes here besides standardizing it with an airspace designation as opposed to a special FAR Part 93. So you're going to have Area D there is that Class Charlie that extends from 1200 to 4100. And then that Lake Otis Part 93 segment will be kind of underneath it. And as we talked about kind of at the kickoff of the meeting, how that south boundary is already going to be moved up to Abbott. So that will be there. And that's just that air traffic communications in that Lake Otis segment from Lake Otis to Elmore there.
So just for clarity, the Seward segment modifying to the Lake Otis segment is going to move that west boundary from the Seward Highway eastbound to Lake Otis. You have to remain, if you're not in that talking to ATC, remain east of Elmore today, and you would have to do the same in the future. Allowing for comms, it can remain east of Lake Otis, below 1200, and just talking to ATC. How much steeper will the climb gradients for instrument departures out of Anchorage be to accommodate the new airspace? And will ICAO NADP-1 be required on more runways compared to the NADP-2 required on some runways now?
Appreciate the question there, Brian. So the departure procedures, the SIDs off of Anchorage RNAV have been tested to comply with flyability. We've been fortunate to have some of our user groups fly in their simulators, and they've been able to give us some real world numbers and simulations as a result of that. So they've had the opportunity to simulate the procedures to ensure they can be flown in their real world equipment. And a lot of times that kind of the worst case scenario with an airplane that's at maximum gross takeoff weight with some wind in the environment as well. Overall, though, we are not expecting noise abatement. Departure procedures are not expected to change at this time.
We're actually increasing the climb gradient for the majority of aircraft, right? So they should be getting up and out of there and not dragging low over top of the community as well, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So unfortunately, in kind of similar to what we see today, we're not expecting drastic changes to the flow at international, departing runway 33 at Anchorage, depart and arriving runway 7. So that traffic volume kind of will still continue in that environment. There will be situations that we'll have to depart 7s, which obviously has a little bit more of an impact to Anchorage as well. But those will have some higher climb gradients as well, as Brian had mentioned, to kind of get up and out as quickly as possible.
Thanks. There is a request down there for the team. If we could bring up slide 17, there's a request to bring up the map again. Have that up. If you have any additional comments, throw them in the chat. But we hear the FAA using safety every time they don't want to do something. That feels like something you say when you don't want to do what the pilots want. How does this make us safer?
I'll kick that question off here. So when we look here at Anchorage specifically, traffic's grown over the years. Our airport continues to be kind of seeing increased cargo. In the summer especially, we're seeing increased passenger carriers come into Anchorage, and our VFR flying always continues to increase, more flight schools and such as that. So traffic has grown over the years. We're trying to be preemptive rather than reactive when it comes here to this project. As we stated, we know the military is United States Air Force is extending that north-south runway to 10,000 feet. So instead of just installing the runway and using the current procedures and airspace that we have, the decision was made through all the studies and analysis to get to this point of being proactive, and we have the opportunity to holistically look at the airspace, build new instrument procedures to Anchorage, Merrill, Field, Elmendorf as well, because all of these airports are interdependent and interconnected together, and safety is really top of mind of how we can work all of this together in a safe, efficient manner. And with that, I'll turn it over to Clark.
Thanks, Aaron. So the question, how does this make us safer? And the answer is by slowing things down a little bit, if you will. I've compared it to driving through a school zone. When the lights are flashing, it's pretty important for you to slow down just because of what could happen. And like Aaron has said, we're trying to be proactive in anticipating continued increase, and with the changes happening to protect non-participating pilots from the IFR corridors in and out of the airports in Anchorage. So that's how I feel like this is making it safer.
And we discussed.
Good. I will add us being commercial aviators provide safety elements to them. Helicopters, military partners provide safety to them. Our parachute jumpers jumping out of the back of planes, providing safety to them. Our flight schools flying around and doing stalls and practicing up in the practice area, providing safety to them. Us means a lot of things, and everyone has to take a look at holistically of the entirety of the Anchorage Bowl and look at how they can also help their partner aviator, whether they're commercial, industry, GA, DOD, or anyone that's out there just bombing around. So very loaded question there, but us is holistically everybody, and FAA taking a look at safety and making a safer environment in this local area. This isn't the entirety of Alaska. This, when you get into this local compressed area, it's continued to grow. It's the fourth busiest cargo airport in the world. General aviation continues to peak. Merrill Field continues to provide a massive amount of resources to the state of Alaska and getting in and out of there for our air taxi and mail. There is just a lot that goes on in this local airspace, and updating it and providing a safer environment for all is paramount.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Brian. You kind of stole my thunder there with being in Alaska. I mean, we're fortunate with such a large state, and as pilots, you can go fly pretty much wherever you want in most parts of the state. But the reality is, when you come into the Anchorage terminal area, it's this Anchorage flying, and you have to comply with the rules, know what the rules are, and there's just a lot of traffic, as Brian said, with heavy cargo operations, international, big airplanes, the military, with fast stealth fighter jets to heavy C-17, C-5s, AWAC airplanes, etc. And then our crucial airfields in Merrill and Lake Hood with the services that they provide with flight training and the air taxis and such as well. So you have a large mix from the smallest all the way back to the biggest and fastest aircraft that are operating here, and trying to make that all manage with new flows, procedures. That's the ultimate goal here with where we are today.
Well, thank you, Clark and Aaron. We appreciate you standing up here and fielding questions as our panelists and our subject matter experts, as air traffic controllers. Great closure to our informal airspace meetings, both yesterday and today. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending our informal airspace meetings. That wraps up our 2 days of informal airspace meetings per requirements. This stays in the Federal Register for 30 days following our last, which is today. So you have until October 24th to utilize the mail or email. You can scan that QR code. This will be saved and on the FAA's YouTube channel. Scan the code. Everything is there to where to make contact, the Federal Register entry, snail mail, email. You have until October 24th to get your comments in to be heard for our Class Charlie proposals. So we appreciate everyone's time and attendance, the questions asked, and presentations made. Thank you all, and have a great evening.